and welcome to Top Secret TV. My name's David Becker. And as usual tonight, we've got a fascinating guest in the studio. Our guest is Eric Dowsett. Now, Eric's written a book called The Moment That Matters. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, David.
How are you this evening?
Fine.
That's good. Now, just want to read a little bit about the book, which it says it restores balance to your home, your life and your environment through awareness and responsibility. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that statement means?
Well, loosely, and try and keep it really as short as possible, it looks at the situation in our environment, our total environment, and seeing it all as energy vibrating at very specific frequencies, how that energy interacts with us and how we interact with that energy. So we're looking at restoring balance and harmony, coming out of ignorance, basically, into awareness.
Right.
Simply put.
Okay, and implicit in that statement is that we're obviously out of balance at the moment. If we have to move into balance, what are some of the factors that cause out of balance?
Well, if we can see that the cells vibrate at this frequency we spoke about earlier on, we are very complex systems of energetic beings, and our cells are all vibrating at highly specific frequencies. Now, our environment is also vibrating at very specific frequencies. Some of those frequencies generated by the Earth, and if we spend time over areas where the Earth is stressed, then that stress will affect the cells in the body. And then we can, of course, be thrown out of balance.
Right. Does it work both ways? Can a human being who is out of whack actually affect the planet?
Indeed.
Really?
Yeah. Well, look at the case recently in England of the BSE, the mad cow disease, where they were thinking that possibly the entire British beef and dairy herd were contaminated. Then a particular society called the Dulwich Health Society in London did some research, and they found that 90% of the cows that had BSE were geopathically stressed. Now, geopathically stressed means that the energy of the Earth is radiating out particular signals which are causing disturbance to cells that spend a lot of time over those areas. Now, if that were the case, then 90% of the British countryside, which is under dairy or beef, would be geopathically stressed. Now, I don't believe that's the case. But if you look at the cow and what they've done to the cow, there's the lot feeding, the feeding of offal. They're kept from their peers, they're kept out of the sun, they're kept from grazing. This cow is going to be stressed. And as a cow gets stressed, then it affects its environment. We can do the same.
Okay, so that sort of causal relationship can give rise to things like viruses or disease.
Indeed, yeah, it weakens the system. Whether, it doesn't matter if the environment's stressed, radiating out particular frequencies, whether that's the Earth's magnetic field, underground water, or geological fault lines, all sending out particular signals that we spend time over, then it compromises the immune system, basically, so that we're liable to much more liable to catch anything that's sort of going around.
Now, one of the concepts you talk about in your book is energy grids. As I understand it, it's like a lattice work of grids that's around the entire planet Earth. Can you perhaps touch on that for a little bit?
Well, the grids, I mean, there are so many different grid patterns around the Earth, and they're being discovered on a regular basis almost, and they've all got certain significance. There are many different grids that we would look at. Not necessarily the ones that cover the whole planet, but more different energy fields. The Hartmann grid, the Curry grid, the Schumann field. They're all fields of energy or standing wave patterns that reflect the consciousness, the state of health of the consciousness of the environment, and also they affect the state of health of the environment by their very presence, if you like.
Are they one of the factors that connect all life? Another concept that you touch on in the book is the connection of energy between all life. Is it literally, as a biology book that me and many students probably read in Biology 101 or whatever, called The Web of Life, is that an accurate description of
I think we might be running parallel here. If all life is connected, then obviously this has a part to play. All of the grids have a part to play, because if all life is connected, then there's nothing outside of our awareness that is not connected. But my point that I made there can be explained in a different way. The connectedness of all life there's two ways of looking at this. There's the Western way or the Eastern way. The Western way looks at a theorem, Alexander Bell's theorem, where recently technology came into being where they could split a photon. Now, a photon is a light particle. So they split the photon and the two particles travelled in opposite directions.
Yeah.
They put a filter on one, and as it reacted to the filter, the other one responded immediately. And they measured the communication between the two particles as faster than the speed of light. Okay, so that either meant Einstein was wrong or something else was at work.
Yeah.
This is the interconnectivity that we're talking about here. The Indians described it thousands of years ago with their symbology, the web of Indra, which, if you can imagine, a great big net, and at the point where every thread joins every other thread, there's a pearl. If you light a candle on the edge of that net and it shines on a pearl, then because of the interconnectivity, all the other pearls know immediately.
Without apparently transcending the laws of physics?
Yeah. Well, this is the laws of physics or Einstein's theory of relativity and the speed of light apply to a physical universe. But if you're moving beyond physical universe into the state of consciousness, then you'll find that the consciousness doesn't have the same rules. Doesn't have the same restrictions that physical matter has.
Right. If we're part of this, or as we're part of this interconnected web, one of the other points you bring up in the book is the idea of co-creation. Is that in a literal sense that we actually co-create existence as we know it?
Indeed.
Really?
Every moment.
And is that limited to so-called conscious beings? Like, do, I don't know, ants co-create just as much as human beings do?
I've never really questioned ants about their ability to co-create. They certainly create their own particular reality, but I don't believe that they have the ability or the power of creation that we have as sentient beings, if you like.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every thought that you have goes into the great matrix of the energy, if you like, and helps to create the next moment. Every emotion that you show radiates out from you and affects the greater whole.
Really? That's kind of like the concept of karma in the Eastern tradition, in the sense that your actions rebounding, or your actions and thoughts rebounding back to you.
Indeed,
at some stage.
Yeah. And you don't have to do this in an aware state, because most of us don't. Most of us are coming out of ignorance.
Which is obviously not bliss.
Well, no. Well, I mean, it can be, as long as you remain in ignorance and you're kept in that state. But it's like Eve eating of the tree of knowledge and became aware, woke up, and there was no ignorance anymore. We started questioning who we are and what we are.
That's very interesting. Now, we were talking before the show started about the way in which you came to write this book. I understand you wrote it in very quick time.
The actual writing of it was a little bit under 2 months. There were many false starts. You know, I did try and get the thing. There's a couple of years now. It's been brewing up, waiting to come out.
Yeah,
but always
show the viewers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But always wondering about how to start it, where to look, what to do. And I came to Melbourne. I was coming down from Brisbane to do a job a little bit June, July last year, and I found out in Canberra just on my way down as I was driving down that the job had fallen through. So I arrived in Melbourne. No one knew I was here, and I had a wonderful opportunity to sit down and write the book. And as I sat, it just came. I mean, I just sat every day. It was a very sort of an easy process. It wasn't a struggle. It was like the timing was right.
Yeah.
This is the right time, and it just flowed.
Yeah.
It took a lot longer to get it published than it did to write it.
I understand also that you used one of the tools that you've been using for many years, dowsing, to assist in developing the book, or some of the ideas. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Dowsing is the main tool that we use throughout the book to discover these energy fields. When you're looking for, most people would traditionally associate dowsing with looking for underground water, but it's a lot more than that. At the turn of the century, the French were using it to track down criminals. Even today, the Swiss police employ a dowser to help them locate missing persons. In the Middle Ages, the Germans used it to locate minerals. And more recently, in the Vietnam War, the American Marines used it to locate tunnels and mines.
Really?
So they're actually trained in dowsing as well.
That's very
Dowsing is not a new age thing by any means.
Yeah.
And most people have probably got a grandmother that's actually used a wedding ring on a piece of cotton over the pregnant mother-to-be to find out what sex the child is.
Really?
Well, that's dowsing as well. So it's not some mystical thing that only a few people can do. Although my name, Eric Dowsett, you know, and then it's I think it's a bit of a cosmic joke. But I do train people, and very, very quickly and very easily. You do need to apply it to become more proficient, but you can use a simple piece of steel and Elrod to locate a huge number of energy fields in the environment.
Just as you know, a particular athlete might be very good at a particular sport while someone else might not be so good at. Are people better or worse at dowsing? Do you find people are more sensitive or better at it than others?
Yeah. For me, when I first picked up the Elrod, it worked straight away. And I picked up a pendulum, and it hung there limply. For 3 months, it wouldn't move. I'm not one to give up, and eventually I was shown how to work the thing. The thing that was getting in the way of me effectively working with that pendulum was my own belief patterns. And once I overcome that, I mean, at first I thought anybody that used a pendulum was weird.
Right.
And I didn't want to be weird.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a subconscious thing going on there.
Yeah.
But when I saw more and more respectable people using a pendulum, then I lost that fear.
Right.
So, practice.
Yeah.
Certain people are much more sensitive. I mean, women are basically much more intuitive, and it is a tool to open up and get in touch with the intuition a lot more. But men find it fascinating and easy to use as well.
And one of the earlier questions we touched on were the electrical fields and standing wave fields. Obviously, the what our human beings, our activities do, like with electrical machinery and things like that, does that have negative effects on those fields? And what are some of the worst offenders in regards to setting up unhealthy fields? Okay.
The physical body is basically an electrical energy system, and it operates at DC.
Like a circuit?
Direct current, yeah. If you like a circuit, but direct current, apart from the nervous system and the brain, which are alternating current. But they're not at a low rate, 50 cycles per second, which is what we've got on our electrical supply at the moment. That's only been around for the past 100 years or so. So it's a totally alien energy field. And there's a lot of studies being done to find out whether it's having an adverse effect or not. But basically depends who funds the study to what they're going to find. My own research has found that the radiation, the magnetic field, based on lots and lots of books that I've read and lots of personal experience, has an effect on the body. It's very difficult to say that the magnetic field from high tension power lines, electric blankets, wall ovens, clock radios, etc., has a negative effect, because it's so difficult to isolate, because there are so many other fields impacting upon us all of the time. It's much more likely that you're going to be adversely affected by electromagnetic radiation if your immune system's already compromised.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling low, if you're feeling tired, or if the cells have already developed a cancerous nature, the cell of the body normally has got a great resistance to electromagnetic radiation. Okay, but when it's weakened by cancer, it loses the ability to fight off the electromagnetic radiation. So the electrical current will then pass through, and remember, it's AC, so it's an alien current for the body.
Yeah.
It's a very low frequency, which is again a very alien frequency for the body. Then it passes through the cell much quicker, and this causes then the cell to degenerate even further and much quicker. So it can actually aggravate a cancer. Now, the same people we spoke about earlier, the Dulwich Health Society, talk about the likelihood or the incidence of geopathic stress affecting people or with cancer. Like this huge number of people, 90% of the people with secondary cancer were diagnosed as living or sleeping in geopathically stressed areas.
Really? And they talk about, is it cancer hotspots that occur sometimes around power lines and things like that?
Around power lines, but there's also other causes. The Earth's energy field as well has been responsible for that. So it's very difficult to isolate. You really need a whole team of dowsers to explore and do a survey, if you like, of different people's. But it's a whole lifetime story. It's the energy of that person. What opened them up? What weakened them in the first place?
Yeah. There's obviously a point there with deliberately inducing magnetic fields. Like on the one hand, you've got perhaps some of the military in some countries using ultra low frequency radiation or ultra low frequency pulses and bursts to do damage to people. And then on the other hand, you've got people like, say, the Rife generator or some of these technologies that actually induce magnetic fields deliberately to assist people in healing. Do you think that deliberate generation of fields has a place in society? For health reasons, obviously, not for weapons.
It probably does. My book tries to get beyond all third-party devices.
To directly
to becoming
interface with
who we are.
Yeah.
Because if we come back out of our state of ignorance into our true nature, then we don't need anything.
So what is our true nature?
Well, we're light. I mean, every energy, consciousness is light, particles of light. So we basically are light beings. We're divine beings. Okay. But we've been confused and we've lost our way over the period of whatever millennia and come into a state of ignorance and darkness. And so we think we need help all of the time. It's still valid, of course. All assistance to get people into a clearer, more balanced, healthy state is valid. I'm not saying that we should do away with all of the forms of medicine that we've got, because we do need them.
Yeah.
But we only need them to help us come back into a state where we can remember who we are, rather than becoming dependent upon them. I'm not a Mr. Fix-It. I can't come into your environment and fix you or your environment. Yeah. What I can do is make you aware of your environment. And through awareness, we come into one of your questions, I believe, on co-creation and how we're creating our reality. We spoke about that a little while ago, how we're creating the reality. Well, if we can accept responsibility for that, and there's no one we can blame anymore, then we can take charge of who we are. But until we can accept responsibility, we can't. We still remain in victim consciousness. So
where does that leave humanity at the moment? I mean, we're reaching the end of a millennium, which has a sort of seems to have a lot of significance to a lot of people, and it's quite plain to me anyway that society seems to be perhaps polarising a little bit more in terms of some people really wanting to move to a new consciousness and others wanting to stand still, perhaps. How do you see this sort of philosophy fitting into, say, the 21st century? Do you think it's where some of society's heading?
I see polarisation as a necessary part of the process.
Why is that?
Because if we don't have fear or greed, we can't have the opposite. So if we were all just cruising and everything was sort of lovely, you know, and we're all sort of coasting and space cadet stuff, then we wouldn't grow.
Right.
We'd all be sort of content, and we'd all just carry on as we were, like sheep.
Yeah.
Okay? But because we've got such a huge polarisation at the moment, then there's a huge drive or strive on many levels, not just an obvious aware level, but many levels, to create a better lifestyle for the entire universe, a sustainable lifestyle. And we've come out of at least 2,000 years of non-sustainable lifestyle. And I mean, it's so easy to see the result of that. It's all around us all of the time. But I do believe that we need that polarity in order to come into a state of greater awareness.
And some people talk about that state of awareness moving us actually literally to either other dimensions or even other planets. Have you heard anything about that, or is there anything like that?
There's not. I haven't. Next book, maybe.
Right.
I haven't dealt with it here. I don't concern myself too much with getting off planet or going somewhere else.
Right.
The title of the book, The Moment That Matters, really says it. It's this moment that we're empowered, not some future potential moment. We can create the future potential moments based on who we are today. If we continue to create them based on greed, fear and ignorance, as we have done for the past 2,000 years, then we're going to get more of the same. If we start to create them based on unconditional love, then we get a whole new ball game playing.
Where do you see people like Jesus and Buddha or beings like that that perhaps were part of our society at various points throughout history? Were they people who were able to recognise their nature, that they were ahead of their time, so to speak? Or how do you see people like that being placed in
I don't
this
think
philosophy?
I don't think anyone really comes ahead of their time. People may not be ready for them, but they do provide an impetus for change. I mean, the Buddhism now is the fastest growing religion, although it's not really a religion, in Australia today.
Really? That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
The Buddha was basically a result of a Hindu upbringing and a control by the Brahmin priesthood, and he broke away from that. It was his sort of rejection of the old ways and his search for the new that led him to his discovery of the oneness and enlightenment. I believe Christ consciousness was a different kettle of fish altogether, and that was an energy, an extremely important energy that actually preached unconditional love. Whereas up to that point there have been a lot of anger and fear. The Old Testament is full of it.
The figureheads, or at least perhaps symbols of what is greatest and good in humankind, that have come throughout periodic intervals throughout history, do you think that perhaps we're due for one, or there is one on the planet now?
Some people would argue that Sai Baba is an avatar, a representative of God on the planet at the moment. I believe they're all over the place. I believe they're everywhere. Beings that aren't necessarily high profile, but that have come down to assist with this transition, because I do believe we're going through a time of major transition.
Really? Why? What leads you to believe that?
It's difficult. I sort of really need a whiteboard, I suppose, but we're spinning out on the edge of the Milky Way. If you can picture looking down at that, we've come out of one of the spiral arms of an inflow of energy, the age of Pisces.
Right.
We're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is an outflow of energy, totally different energy around it altogether. It's like we're in a pressure cooker and the heat's being turned up, but the pressure hasn't released yet. So we get major polarisation within that situation. We get a lot more people going into fear and anger and greed and the darkness, if you like, scurrying back into the cave, and we get a lot more people coming out into the light.
Do you think that it can manifest itself as actual physical changes? Like a lot of people talk about earth changes, you know, great cataclysmic upheavals and volcanoes and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's possible?
Indeed. The earth, as I understand it and as I've worked with it, is a living being. It may not have the same level of awareness or of ability or emotional energy that we've got, but when we look at every cell as being consciousness, as energy, then the earth is made up of cells just the same as we are. It just doesn't have the same spirit, if you like, breathed into it, of life and motivation that we sentient beings have. So the earth itself is reacting to our energy, our emotional energy and our mental energy, like the story of the cows, the mad cow disease. The earth responds and reacts. So it's possible that there's so much stress being placed upon our system at the moment by abuse that it will react. But I also believe that it's quite possible to change that by changing our thoughts, by changing our consciousness. It's like we need to sort of step up a couple of levels of awareness.
There certainly seems to be a level of that awareness there. I mean, a lot of people just in my circle of friends all want to move out in the country and adopt a different kind of a lifestyle, you know. It's really quite an extraordinary movement. We seem to be running out of time, so I just want to just give the viewers a quick look at your book. Now, it's actually distributed by Gemcraft.
That's right.
And they can have a squiz at bookshops, both New Age and normal bookshops.
Yep, just if they haven't got it, just ask them to get it in.
Yep. Okay, and also you've got an event at the end of September, the 27th and 28th. Can you just tell us briefly about that?
Yeah, that's a workshop here in Melbourne on personal health. So we look at the relationship we have with ourselves and others.
Right.
We look at the body as an energy field, storing memory, and how memory plays a significant part in controlling what we are. Creatures of habit. What are our habits, how they keep generating the same old reality, and what we can do about changing that.
Right. All right, well, thank you very much, Eric Dowsett.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for tonight. We'll be back next week with another episode of Top Secret TV, so tune in then. Good night.